hosted by Region 6 during the Careers and Student Affairs Month. This morning's session will start with a presentation that will spark conversation around various elements of the graduate school search. Then we will transition into a panel discussion with panelists that are current or recent graduates of graduate programs. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. The session recording will be added to the NASPA YouTube channel for viewing later. Please also be sure to mute yourself while you are not speaking. The chat is open and we encourage engagement in that space. I now have the pleasure of introducing our presenter this morning, Dr. Lisa Gates. She, her, hers is a published author in the fields of communication, leadership, and a passionate award-winning leadership educator. With 3 decades in the college classroom and years of consulting experience, she's a student-centered, anti-racist, equity-minded educator who works with students to develop their communication and leadership competencies so they can more fully realize their own and others' human potential, attain the careers they envision, and lead others meaningfully, effectively, and ethically. She teaches leadership to master's students and undergraduates at San Diego State University and serves as the director for the SDSU Leadership Minor. She holds an Associate of Arts degree from Cypress College, a Bachelor and Master's of Arts in Communication from San Diego State University, and a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Communication with an emphasis in Critical Organizational Gender Studies from the University of Southern California, where her dissertation was considered for the International Communication Association's Dissertation of the Year Award. Dr. Gates' research addresses organizational power, health and gender communication, educational leadership, strategies that address students' full participation in their education, and qualitative and narrative methods. As a first-generation college student, Dr. Gates is well aware of the variety of ways that students may show up in the learning environment. She seeks to support student engagement so that students can more readily self-author, participating more fully in their own learning and development. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lisa Gates.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and welcome to everyone here. I'm hoping that this session will give you insight into the graduate school search process. And I have to say, it's very strange to hear my bio. I'm like, wow, did I do all that? And then when you hear like 3 decades, you go, okay, she's old. so that's my interpretation. But I am super happy to be here with you today to offer insight into this process. And the fact that you're here to learn something about this process means that you are preparing yourselves to be more intentional than most folks are in this process. And I think just by virtue of being here and wanting to learn more, you are setting yourselves up for success in this process. And so because, as you heard, I have attended a number of different institutions and I moved forward, right? So I transferred from high school to community college to 4-year. I went from my bachelor's degree to my master's and then my master's to my PhD. And I have to tell you that I still have that feeling in my gut of what it felt like to think about moving to the next stage. And so I can feel that along with you if that's something that you're feeling as well as you consider moving into kind of that next phase forward or upward, however you're imagining that. And so we are going to talk about these issues. And so as Kevin mentioned, I'm Lisa Gates. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And let's go ahead then and jump right in. But I do want to encourage you to use the chat. And I'm going to ask you to actually go ahead and move forward, Kevin. In just a moment, I'm going to have you put your name and your location in the chat because we want to see who you are. And so, but I want to tell you where we're headed today and how this session will move forward. First, I'm going to talk right away about what might get in the way of this process. And it's something that I felt so deeply as I was considering the process of moving into graduate level work. So we're going to hit that right away at the very beginning of the session. Then I'm going to ask this very important question. Are you ready for graduate study? Are you ready for it right now? And we'll explore that. And then why graduate school? And then where and with whom should you study? This is a very important question. You get to think intentionally about what you want to do with this degree. And while I am certainly a fan of knowledge for knowledge's sake, I fell in love with learning while I was at my community college. I was not like an academic type. I never would have imagined going on. But I fell in love with learning itself and what it was possible to know. And I can tell you that that has fueled me for decades, that idea. But I do think there should be some practical thing that happens on the other side. And so I want you to think about that. And I'm going to ask you some key questions about that as well. We will talk about writing the statement of purpose and things to keep in mind, requesting letters of recommendation, preparing for the interview, financial support, and final thoughts. So there's a lot packed into this relatively short session. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. So I'm going to ask you now to go ahead and put your name and location in the chat, because we do want to know where you're coming from and who you are. And so we really appreciate you being here with us today. And we really do hope that from myself and our panel that you get your questions answered that you came here for today. And so I think, and I probably don't have to say these things, but since they're right here, we'll say, let's keep it respectful, use I statements if that's needed, and then confidentiality. You are here to get your questions answered and to get the support you need. And we are the people who really desire to offer that to you. Right? Everyone in this space cares deeply about students. We've committed our lives to it. And so we want to make sure that you get your questions answered and that you don't hesitate to ask anything that's on your mind. There's no such thing as a bad question in this process. So let's make this work for you. Okay, that's what we are here for. So let's go ahead and thank you. I see we have some folks from Fullerton, we have San Diego folks here, Riverside, welcome Riverside and Irvine, and where else? Let's see. Okay, we got a UCR alum. Awesome. So welcome to you all for wherever you are coming from today. I'm really, really happy to see you here with us today. So thank you. So I'm going to ask a question and, so what, and you can put this in the chat, what do all of these folks that you see on the screen, and you should recognize some or all or most of these folks, what do they have in common? Any thoughts? And go ahead and put that in the chat right now. What do these people have in common? Right? We see Maya Angelou, we see Lupita Nyong'o, we see Lady Gaga, we see the greatest Serena, we see J-Lo, we see Awkwafina, Tom Hanks, and for some reason, I can't, the one in the middle top is escaping me right now. Some of you know who that is and I don't. I can't remember. I'll circle back to getting old. So what do they have? They have drive and passion. Thank you, Nadine. What else do they have in common? Give me a couple. So I invite some of you to give me a couple more ideas about what they have in common, in addition to drive and passion. What else? They are famous. Yes, they are. They are very successful. Thank you. They're artists in many ways, right? They live their lives in such a way that they have made it their own for sure. Okay, so we see all of that. And yes, all of those are accurate. All of those are absolutely true. But they also have this other thing in common. Let's go to the next slide. The imposter phenomenon. They all are reportedly, right, people who experience this thing called imposterism, the imposter syndrome, where what I prefer is the imposter phenomenon. And this is something that can hold people back. But as we can see, depending on how you use it in your life, it can also drive people to a state of excellence or overachieving in the work that they do. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll tell you a little bit more about what this imposter phenomenon is. So if you can advance to the next slide, Kevin, that would be great. So imposterism is really a state of feeling like an intellectual fraud in the spaces we occupy. I don't know if any of you have ever felt that way. Like, how is it that I possibly could be in this space right now? But the imposter overestimates the abilities of others and underestimates the work that others put into their success. They also underestimate their own capabilities. Okay, so this can lead to overworking and burnout. Some of you in this space may have experienced this before. It is very common during times of transition, and this is also including the transition from wherever you are right now to that next degree program. And so I am raising this right now because I think that even considering applying to a master's or doctoral program can bring these feelings up. And I just want to put this out there because all of us in this space, we don't want this to get in the way of you pursuing your passion, right? That you belong wherever you decide you want to go, making sure that that is a good fit for you. Okay, so I wanted to get this out in front because if even coming into this space gives you feelings of imposterism, we want to deconstruct that right now, right? We want to put that aside because you deserve to be here and you deserve to be in a graduate program. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. I think, if it's a little bit scary, you might be onto something, right? If it gives you butterflies, it might be that this is the thing that you need to step into, right? We talk in student affairs about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And this may be one of those moments for you, or maybe not. Maybe you're like, I'm not uncomfortable at all. I'm ready to go. Okay, so if that's you, that's awesome. But if it isn't, if you are feeling a little bit of imposterism or a lot, you are not alone. That there's a lot of us who are in that camp with you. And I raise this because I remember when I got into grad school, I could not believe it. And I remember being in my MA orientation, freaking out inside. Like there's this motor, like I wanted to get out of the room, but I stayed. And I remember how it felt. So I wanted to address this right at the top of this session, just so if it's something that you're experiencing, you know that it is normal and that you're not alone. Let's go ahead and move forward and we will go right into this content. So the question, are you ready for graduate study now? And I really do try to take a holistic perspective, not just on this issue, but most issues, right? What do you want to do with this degree? And just know that stepping into any program, as you probably well know, is a challenge for the whole of your life. Okay, so we know that getting a degree, particularly an advanced degree, requires sacrifices of recreation, family, friends, and often our own well-being. Okay, I'm betting that folks in the room can attest to that. And, I think just keeping that in perspective. I think the other piece is this. When we're considering the application to other programs, we're thinking about how we can align our lived experiences, who we are, our identities with the programs we're applying for. That's kind of a pushing out from where we are. I think one very important thing is this, that you in this process are central, not peripheral, right? So understanding yourself in this process, and even in this application process of learning more about who you are as you step forward into this, is central, not peripheral to this process. Okay, so knowing yourself, knowing who you are and what you want out of your life is a very important question, not just how do I do my best to get in. Okay, that's important, but really it is situated within the big, bold vision that you have for your whole life. And we want to make sure that you're thinking intentionally about that right now. The other thing is life does not hit pause because grad school calls. I mean, this is very real. I see Erica nodding. Erica's got small children at home, just finished her doctoral degree. I remember being in my master's and grad program where my mom was diagnosed with cancer at the very beginning of my grad program, in the master's program. And she did pass away my very last semester of my PhD program. And so all of that process was being navigated during that time. And for me, there's like, I have a no excuses policy. I don't not do my very best because of whatever I'm experiencing. If I could go back in time, I would have redone things differently. But I want this to be on your radar as well. The other part is this. I know that I came into my educational process certainly feeling imposterism, and then with a hope that this process of education was going to somehow heal me. This may not speak to your experience, but it did to mine. And I can tell you that it didn't heal me. Okay, so I just want to be really real about that process. It didn't heal me. And so I think making sure we put what can happen as a result of this process is put in perspective. And then I think the really important question to ask as well is this. Do you need an advanced degree for what you want to do? Like, really, are others doing it without an advanced degree? And so I think that's a very important question to ask. And so explore that with the people that you know. So let's go ahead and move forward. So why graduate school? So you completing graduate school equals what, right? Do the math. Do you want to be a scholar, teacher, activist, practitioner, administrator, right? This is your decision. It could be some combination of those. Oftentimes we don't just end up in one place here, right? But I think you get to answer, do you want to advance your earning potential? That's a very good reason for moving forward in your career, for sure. Do you, like me, love knowledge for its own sake? Are you here for skills, strategies, networking in order to do or elevate yourself in your work more, right? You want to do that now. Is it about being first in your family to achieve that? That's a very important goal as well. And then is it a personal challenge? You want to see, am I capable of doing this? I think I am. I'm going to go make it happen. So what is your why? And will it have a good return on that investment, right? Will it get you to where you want to go? Please go ahead and share in the chat what your why is for considering moving forward in your graduate studies. Go ahead and post that in the chat right now. Awesome. Moses, congratulations again that you're first in your family to achieve a doctoral degree. That's awesome. What else is your why, folks? Why consider grad school? To impact student affairs field for women of color pursuing leadership. That's amazing. Thank you, Erica. Anybody else? What is your why? Okay, I feel the need to advance in my career for knowledge and interest. So we see a combination of those things. Seeing more people of color and women in higher ed. Thank you so much, Minerva. Promotions at work and increased earning potential. These are all excellent reasons. Yeah, not a lot of folks who look like you have a doctorate degree. Thank you so much, Mario. So there are many reasons for why we might pursue a grad degree. Okay, so we also see professional growth and to keep learning. Yeah, and I love that you said that, Julie. Thank you so much. We're never done learning, right? So I had some idea that when I got to my master's program, you know, when I graduated, I was going to have all the knowledge. I was like, okay, but I still have all these questions. So then I moved on to a PhD and then I finished that. I'm like, I didn't answer. I just have even more questions, right? So I am never done learning. We are never done until we are done. Okay, so we have the possibility to keep learning, and I totally encourage it. So yeah, Brasilia, to be a practitioner with a large skill set to network, advance in my career, to gain more knowledge and practice in equity work. Those are amazing reasons why. Thank you so much for sharing your whys, everyone. And then we also have Harper, who's sharing growing through the coursework and connecting with others with similar passions. That is one of the best outcomes of grad school, in my opinion, that you have a community of people who are in it with you, who care about the same things. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's go ahead and move forward, Kevin. Thank you. And so I think, the question of where and with whom are we going to study? Where should I go to grad school? With whom? Some of you may be what I call place bound. Are you locked into the place that you're in? For some of you, you may get tuition assistance in your current program because of your work status, and that is amazing. But what is it that you really want to learn, right? It sounds like a lot of you want to explore equity-related or equity-minded issues and grow in that arena. So who's doing that work, and whose focus are you most aligned with? Right? Who's doing the work in a way that you see yourself doing it, right, in the coming years, right? And this process, by the way, it seems like it takes forever to get through, but I will tell you, I feel, Erica, like it was just yesterday when you were starting your program, and here you are, Dr. Aros. So I think, while it seems like it's this long, laborious process, it really moves very quickly in many respects, right? Because life moves forward while you're doing it. But what are the options in your region if you are place bound? If you're willing to relocate, you have far more options for, determining where you want to go. And so that's one key question. I think another key question is, do you want to take up an academic or a practitioner focus? Most folks in the student affairs arena really want to have a practitioner focus. And I think this is a really important question because sometimes, right, the doctoral programs available to us are EDD programs and some are PhD programs. And I think the previous thought process about EDD versus PhD is one is more academic and kind of social science focused, and the other one is more practitioner focused. That might be the case, but I think what we see is a very blurry line between the EDD and the PhD in many cases. And I think deciding what you want to do with it, and then asking yourself, where am I going to go now with this? What do I want to do? And so that should drive your program as well. I think a very important question also is scholars that you would like to work with. Who are the scholars? So I want to encourage you to ask at the end of my presentation, our panelists, who do you want to work with? Who did they work with that they might recommend? And what was that focus? But you have power in this process to think intentionally about who you would like to study with. So I would think some questions, if you want to do research, if that's what really excites you, find out if those scholars do research with their students. I think if you're thinking about a master's program, I think that's a really important question. If you want to do research, some programs have the capacity for their doctoral faculty to do research with students in the MA programs, and some don't have that capacity. And I think that is a very important question that you should ask moving forward. I think the other question is, what will position you best to work with them? So what have you done so far that you can bring to them? And I think you have the capability to reach out directly to them to say, I know who you are. I am familiar with your research. I've read these articles that you published. I'm very excited to talk to you about the possibilities of, the kind of research that we might collaborate on in the future. And here's what I've done so far toward that end. And so even if it's papers that you've written as an undergrad or in your master's program, I think that could be very persuasive as well. I think the other thing is, in light of that, is network. Set up a meeting with the program director for the program that you are interested in or programs. Meet with current and former students. That is a super powerful thing to do. So because they don't have as vested an interest in recruiting you, so they're going to be like, here's the good stuff, and maybe here's the stuff that could, that could improve in this program. And then make sure that that program is going to take you to where you want to go, right? And all you can do is ask really good questions. So don't shy away from asking the questions that are on your mind. Let's go ahead and move forward. I've got some personal statement do's and don'ts for you here. I've actually done an entire session on personal statements. And so I'm going to just like briefly cover these. As someone who has had to read through hundreds, if not thousands of personal statements through the years, I can tell you this: you want to bring your best writing and editing to that statement. You know, I think the way to think about this is this: you don't have control over who's going to read that statement. It may be that this person knows you, or maybe they don't. So let's assume they don't know you personally. The only thing they're going to know about you is the reading of these statements and the other materials that you submit. Okay, that's it. So at this point, you're a name on a spreadsheet, and now they see your writing. So you want to make sure that the first impression that you make is really, you know, a positive one. I can tell you that as, you know, somebody who has been assigned to read through, let's say, 50 of these in like a short period of time. What you do in the process, in addition to using the rubric, is you have to identify criteria for eliminating some, because we can't interview all those people, right? So now my radar is up for what can I eliminate based on? What are my criteria for eliminating? Just because we can't do it all, right? And I will tell you that writing quality is one of those top things. If it's full of grammatical and spelling and typographical errors, I am going to be like, okay, I can eliminate based on that. Okay, so I think the other piece here is commitment, your commitment to JEDI work, right? Justice, equity, diversity, inclusion work, and maybe your diversity, equity, inclusion philosophy. What do you want to see? And we've seen some excellent pieces of that represented in the chat based on your why. And so be sure to use your why in that personal statement. Create a strong opening. Maybe you introduce a theory in the field that you studied, and you want to open with that, and maybe you argue against it, or maybe you say this really does embody what I'm about as a professional and what I want to continue to build on as I move forward. Or it could be somebody who urged you to apply to the program. You can mention those names for sure. And then, of course, you want to talk about why you want to join their program. It may be tempting to use the same letter or statement of purpose for all your applications, but that can be spotted a mile away if somebody's reviewing a good number of these. And so you want to make it specific to that institution, specific to that program, and with those faculty. The more specific you can be, the better. Okay, so you can use websites and so on, and in your interviews and things like that, to get the information you need to include in that personal statement. And then, of course, your experiences related to the field, maybe research you've done that applies, and then your journey leading you to do this work. So many of our amazing master's students in our program at SDSU, we call it the PELSA program, they tell the story about how they benefited from the work of professionals in the field, and that they want to build on their ability to help others. But help alone is probably not specific enough. Does that make sense? Like, what kind of help do you want to provide? And so also how you will use the degree. What are you going to use the degree for? And I think that's a very important thing, just so the people reading your statement know that you know what this is for. And I'll give you an illustration of, like, here's another criterion that I could use to eliminate this person. I could, like, there are people who apply to multiple programs and then they don't give you a specific letter. And then what ends up happening is you end up with a personal statement that says, I've always wanted to be a geography high school teacher. It's like, what? Okay, no. Okay, no. And that's next, right? So don't give folks the reason to eliminate your work, okay? Your personal statement, your resume, and any other materials they're asking for, okay? Personal statement do's and don'ts continued. So if you do know somebody, mention their name, but don't assume that you don't have to try in the process. I've seen people who have connections not really show up and give their best work to this process. And so really, I think personally, if you have somebody who has recommended you that other people will know, I think it means that you should try harder and represent that person, if that makes sense. Make sure you don't exceed number of words or pages that are required, because people are tired when they're reading this. And so you want to make sure that you don't further exhaust them. And then don't forget about your audience and to have empathy for them. Put yourself in their shoes. They're probably, again, reading a good number of these. So make yours stand out and keep your application from being eliminated. We can go ahead and move forward. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about preparing for the MA or doctoral interview. So these interviews are a very important process in being selected for those programs. And so at the MA or doctoral level interview, this means that you've passed through the first part of the process, and now you've been invited to interview. And so in that interview process, it really is, if we look at what I just said about representing in your statement of purpose, you want to represent now in the interview process. And this is where they can see you face to face, or it might be via Zoom. But they get a sense of who you are and how you're going to work with others. I can tell you that we want to bring people in who we feel we're going to be able to work well with, that we're going to be able to collaborate well with. And so how you show up in that space is really important. And so in that interview, you might want to highlight experiences like your research potential, if that's what's called for in the program, or previous experience that you've had. Again, expressing your commitment to Jedi work is very, very important. And then share short and long-term goals and how they align with what the program offers. So again, you're pinpointing how you understand this program, and what you want out of it is going to get you to where you're going, at least based on your understanding at that point in time. You want to speak to your ability to persist within that academic program, and then tell a story about an experience that you had and how you overcame it, and how that ties to what you're going to learn in the program. And I've got the STAR method up there. You tell about a time when something happened, a task you were given, what you ended up doing, and then the results or the outcome of that, right? And so you might include that as part of an answer to something. And that STAR method is particularly helpful if somebody says, tell me about a time when you had a conflict with someone and how you overcame it. And now you have a story, right? And that also sells you as somebody who can get along with and overcome challenges with others, right? Particularly if the program you're looking for or you're looking into has a cohort model, you're going to be in the trenches with that cohort through the entirety of that program. And so you want to present a self, right, that can work well and collaborate well and achieve things, right? And create positive change within the program itself as well. So I would also ask, to the extent that they will share, what type of interview you will have. Will it be a one-on-one? Will it be panel? Will it be small groups? Some programs put you through exercises with other applicants to see how you compare to those people. I personally find those incredibly stressful because if you're an inclusive person and now you're pitted against your peer, anyway, so don't get me started on that, but it's like it makes my heart hurt. Okay, but if that's how they do it, you got to be ready for it, okay? And so do your homework, identify your questions, and practice, rehearse for that. You can Google like interview questions from master's programs or EDD or PhD programs in this topic area, and those will come up. Use those to practice and rehearse. Okay, let's go ahead and move forward. Make sure you know what financial support is available to you in the programs that you're looking for, right? We know that costs can add up over time. There may be tuition remission, there may be scholarships, there may be assistantships that could be teaching assistantships or graduate assistantships. What are the limits on that? Because we know that I'll speak for SDSU and UCSD. You can only work up to 20 hours. You can't go over, but you can do 2 assistantships. And so one at 2 different institutions is possible. And so ultimately you could work almost full-time or actually full-time within graduate assistantships. So if you are in res ed and that's something you're interested in, there may be opportunities for live-on positions, and that can reduce your living costs as well. And so explore what is available to you. Let's go ahead and move forward. And these are some final thoughts. And I realize I didn't include the slide on asking for letters of rec. So let me give you some tips for that. I've, through the years, written, I don't know how many. There are too many to count. I know in one semester I wrote 70 letters of recommendation. Okay, it's ridiculous. I appreciate students who show tremendous humility and respect in making that request. Okay, so we don't get paid extra for writing these letters of rec that we spend quite a bit of time preparing. Be very respectful. Maybe you check in with somebody that you would want to ask for a letter of rec that you haven't talked to in a while before you make that request. We can see it coming from a mile away. However, it is really wonderful when a former student treats it with the greatest of respect, because they know that we are pressed for time in the work that we do. And so please keep in mind that you're asking somebody to do something above and beyond. It may be that it only requires a brief survey, like, we may not have to write an actual letter, right? So know before you ask what the professor or supervisor will be asked to do. It could be just a simple survey, but it might be a letter of rec. And I have to tell you, sometimes I've written complete letters only to go in to upload it to see that it's a survey. I'm like, I can't get that time back. So I would just say be very respectful of that. But here are some final thoughts. Talk to your mentors, talk to former professors and professional colleagues, and find out what is best for you as well. Explore that. Read articles by key scholars in your field and find out where they went to grad school. Start your search early. Conduct informational interviews, particularly if you are a student. You have so much power in that, because people everywhere want to help students. And I would say, even if you aren't a student, conduct those informational interviews, because we really want to help folks make the best decisions. And you have power in this process to identify the pros and cons. You're not just at the mercy of these programs. You can identify the strengths and challenges for every program. And trust me, every program has strengths and challenges, okay? There's no perfection, because go back to, we're pressed for time. Stay organized, create a spreadsheet. And this can be a very confusing process, because especially if you're coming from that imposter syndrome, you may be thinking, I'll just be lucky to get in anywhere, right? I mean, I remember having that thought. But please rely on your mentors to support you during this confusing time. It's tough to make decisions sometimes, unless you are place bound or institution bound. Then your options are more limited. And then remember that you're interviewing them as well. So come with the questions that you have. And then if you have more than one offer, you get to decide where you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to the next slide. I just want to say thank you. I hope that this information has been helpful. I know that you have got this process. I know that it can be overwhelming to think about this, but I hope that there's some tidbit of information that was offered here that will be helpful for you as you move forward and consider where you might apply to and how this process will work for you. So thank you so much for your time and attention. Truly grateful for all of that.
Thank you, Dr. Gates, for your thoughtful presentation. Definitely gave us some great things to think about and consider when it comes to that graduate school search. At this time, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Dr. Mario Garbe, Assistant Dean of Student Affairs for the John Muir College at the University of California, San Diego, to lead our panel discussion.
Cool. Thank you, Kevin. Welcome again, everyone. So we're going to transition now to a panel of folks who are either currently in the graduate program, have recently just completed the graduate program, both at the master's and doctoral level. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. And so, whoever wants, we'll go ahead and begin with Harper, who's immediately to the right on the screen. And then if you want to popcorn to the next panelist. But if you can please introduce yourself, pronouns, your role, and degrees.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Harper Estes. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I currently work as a graduate assistant. So I have an assistantship with my master's degree. I'm at USD, University of San Diego. And my graduate assistantship is working with student activities and involvement. So I work with student government and all that good stuff. And I recently graduated from UC San Diego in June, and I got my bachelor's in cognitive behavioral neuroscience, and I minored in education. So I really enjoyed that. And then now I'm getting my master's. I'm a first-year student here at USD, and it's the Master's of Higher Education Leadership. Yeah, so I look forward to talking more, and I'll pass it over to Erica, or Dr. Erica.
Thanks, Harper. Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Erica Aros, and I am, my pronouns are she, her, hers. My roles, first and foremost, I'm a mom of two little ones. I am also currently a director of employee engagement, which is a brand new role at San Diego State University. I just started it, but I have a lot of experience, over 15 years of experience working in student affairs. And my degrees, I got my bachelor in English from UC Riverside. Hi, Julie. And then I got my master's of education with, it was called an MED in educational organization and leadership with an emphasis in student affairs. And that was from the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And then about 10 years later, after I graduated from my master's, I decided to go for a PhD, which I never expected to do. And that was while I was working here at San Diego State University. And so I ended up going into the PhD program, which is a joint doctoral program between SDSU and Claremont Graduate University, so kind of near Riverside again. And I did my research on how mentoring relationships impact career advancement for student affairs professionals, particularly Asian American women. But I'm really interested in researching further just women of color in general and career advancement. And let's see, that is pretty much it for this part. Thanks. I will popcorn it over to Minerva.
Hi, my name is Minerva. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am currently an assistant coordinator at San Diego State, which is a hybrid position between two different departments on campus. I currently work with the residential education office, overseeing the two front desks over here, and then also with the Center for Student Orgs and Activities. So on this side, I work with Aztec Nights and SDSU Go, which is alternative programming that we have here. I'm currently a PULSA graduate student, and for those of you who don't know the PULSA program, it stands for Post-Secondary Educational Leadership with a specialization in student affairs. It's a very long title, but I'm currently in my second year in the program, and yeah, keep it at that. I will pass it over to, let's see who has not gone, Moises.
Hi, everyone. Moises Alvarado Garcia, use he and pronouns. I serve as the Student Care and Accountability Specialist over at UC San Diego within John Muir College. And degrees, so I did an undergraduate degree in kinesiology, so not in education whatsoever. Got my master's in higher education over at Cal State Fullerton, and then completed the JDP joint doctoral program between UC San Diego and Cal State San Marcos. Defended my dissertation on Tuesday, so this is all very new to me. And I think that was it. Yeah, and I'll pass it on to Ariela.
Thank you, Moises, and congratulations, because he's officially doctor, he's doctor, so congratulations. Hi, everyone. Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Ariela Canizal. I use she, her, and ella pronouns. I am I was going to say my old title. I am the director of community and leadership development at the University of San Diego. So I actually have the lovely pleasure of getting to see Harper pretty much every other day when I get to see her. I am also an alum of the Masters of Higher Education program that Harper is doing here at USD. But my journey kind of started kind of a bit bumpy. So originally I was trying to do the master's program at Miami University in Ohio. But life happened, kind of like, the presentation earlier, things happened. I am a first generation college student. I am originally from Boyle Heights, so about 2 hours away from here in LA. So I went out of state for my undergrad. I got a degree in communications, and then I kind of just fell into higher ed. And then I moved to the Midwest. I realized it was lonely out there and I struggled. And so I did not graduate from the program. So I took about 6 years off before deciding to come to USD to do the Masters of Higher Ed program. And I really told myself that journey was something that was important to experience, because I feel like everyone feels like there has to be a path that you have to take in order to get where you are. And I never thought, as Erica was saying, like, I didn't think I was going to get a PhD. I'm in my 5th year right now. And it was because my mentors at USD were listening to me and my story and told me that I could do this. And especially my narrative, knowing that a lot of the research that's out there, especially with Latinas or that identify more on the Mexican American identity, it's very much a deficit. It's about like sacrifices, the fact that we have to give up something in order to pursue something. And I believe that as a Latina, we balance a lot of things. And if anything, we like to empower and uplift each other and bring people along with it, whether it's family, chosen family, biological family, friends, however you may describe that. So that is my research interest and what I hope to be writing my dissertation. I am writing my qualifying paper as we speak, because working full-time and going to school is hard, y'all. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's hard. So I'm excited to go more in depth in the near future. Mario, do we have anybody else? I couldn't remember from the list.
No, it was just the 5 of you. So perfect. Thank you so much. And yeah, so we have a diverse pool of different folks, some in their master's program, some complete their master's program, some currently in doctorate programs. So definitely keep that in mind. So we're going to go ahead and drop the questions that we have prepared in advance, just because this one's a multifaceted question. So just so for our panelists to be able to see that. But then also, if you have any questions after the ones that we have prepared in advance, feel free to also drop those in the chat. And then we'll go ahead and ask those when we open up to everyone. But the first question, like I said, is a multifaceted one, and perfect because Ariela started talking a little bit about this, but just kind of talk a little bit about your grad school journey, master's and or doctorates for those that are at that level. And then how did you approach your searches? What were things that you took into consideration? And how did you identify or research programs? And specifically, what did you look for? So a really straightforward, easy question. So whoever wants to begin with that one.
I can jump in and start. Well, because I said that there was 10 years in between my master's and doctoral program, my life looked a lot different. When I started my master's program, I had no kids, I was single. I was just getting out of undergraduate school, and I really wanted to experience living in a different state. And so the main factor for me in looking for a grad school was location. I thought I was going to be in a big city. I was looking at NYU, I was looking at Chicago and all those things, but the program fit, I wasn't seeing it. And so I ended up just kind of expanding the search outside of Chicago. And that's how I ended up at Urbana-Champaign in Illinois, because the program as a Master's of Education, MED, that just seemed to fit me more, as I felt like I was more of a practitioner or wanted to be more of a practitioner. And so I decided to do that. Now with my doctoral program, I had a 2-year-old at the time that I decided to go into it and wanted to have another child. I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I was just like, well, we'll just see what happens. And I was location bound because I'm from San Diego originally, and I had just come back after being away for 15 years. So I wasn't going to leave. We already had a house, we were established here. And because I was working for SDSU, I just decided, well, I'm going to just choose between the ones that they offer. And so, but of course, because they offer 2 doctoral programs, an EDD and a PhD, I had a really tough time deciding which one to do. I could have seen myself going either way. I talked to a lot of people about it who have done either. So I decided to go with the PhD because at that time in my career, I was getting a little disillusioned by student affairs because it was my first management position that I was in at the time. And I was seeing a lot of things, the politics and all those things that I didn't see when I was, you know, a frontline student services professional. So I wasn't even sure if I was going to stay in education. So I decided to go with the PhD just so that it could be recognizable everywhere if I wanted to go into corporate world or start my own consulting business. And then also the EDD for SDSU was also focused on community college, which didn't fit my my experience and interests. So that was one of the reasons why I chose to go with the PhD. The cost hurt because Claremont Graduate University is a private school. Although I got my SDSU side for free, I pretty much paid almost a full-time, like a full doctoral program, because CGU was almost twice the amount of a public school. So that I will be paying off loans for a while. But that's a little bit about my experience. Thanks.
I can go ahead and share a little bit about mine. So mine is actually pretty recent, since I came straight from my undergrad into my graduate school program, and I graduated from UCSB with a degree in sociology in about 2021. So I'm in my second year, and kind of a little bit of how I approached my search. I sometimes feel like I'm very type A. So like I like to make spreadsheets on just literally about everything. So I made a spreadsheet because it was a lot better to organize kind of like my life. And on my spreadsheet, it was like a postgraduate school breakdown, and that really helped me with my search process, because it allowed me to kind of see everything in one place. So I included location, the degree name, the minimum GPA, GRE, do I need to take it, deadlines to apply, requirements, letters of recommendation, if so, how much, links to the financial aid website, just like to refer to the costs, and then personal statement prompts, because ultimately prompts can look the same, but also different at the same time. And then also created a Google Drive with literally everything grad school related. So whether it was my CV or my resume, GRE prep, letter of recommendation, personal statement, and graduate assistantship applications and stuff that they needed for that. And I think by doing this, I was able to kind of see everything all in one place, and I was able to feel not as overwhelmed. And it also allowed me to also keep people accountable as far as like from like my letter of recommendations. Like I created a spreadsheet for them to like just like I try to make the process as easy as for them. Like they just had to check a box like, okay, I submitted it for that school. I submitted for that school. So that's kind of how I approach the overall search, is just making a spreadsheet. But things that I did take into consideration were like my non-negotiables and what was important to me. One thing that was super important to me was distance. I'm a first generation student, and a lot of the time that does entail having some form of familial commitment and staying nearby. My parents are much older now, so it was like, am I going to be able to drive down to Santa Barbara to take like my dad to an appointment that he might not be able to? And it's just something that it was a non-negotiable for me. I knew that I could not look out of state. Like that was not an option for me. And then also, if I can afford it, I did get some offers for some schools, and I was like, I don't know if I can afford to be 90K in debt. And it's mostly just because like I was looking at the career I'm going into and looking at the pay of it, and it's like realistically, I didn't want to be paying off loans for like 30 years. So that's kind of what some of my non-negotiables were, but also things that you're willing to negotiate. So like for me, like I was willing to negotiate like being in a total new and different area. Like I could have chose to stay like near my hometown, but I was willing to like step out of my comfort zone and go to a different institution. And so yeah, that's a little bit about my journey and how I approached it.
I can share a little bit. So very similar. I had a lot of things that prevented me from leaving. Family was a huge, important part of that, of being able to have to stay geographically near where I was at, just because of family issues, health issues, all of those things. So I actually looked into spaces that offered affordable programs to me that were nearby. So for me, coming from Los Angeles, living in Fontana, going to school in Pomona, that was Cal State Fullerton. So I actually only applied to one program. I got very spiritual in that time and just kind of said, like, if God wants it, that's what's going to happen. But I did really do my best to network and connect with students and faculty that were in that program, because I knew that was going to be like my one shot at a master's degree, or else I was going to figure it out and do other things. So luckily I was able to connect with the faculty, some of the faculty I knew from my time as an undergrad at Cal Poly Pomona, and went through the whole process and ended up getting in. So really, really fortunate to do that. And then I actually only took a year off between undergraduate and my master's program, because I knew if I took more time off, it was just going to get harder and harder for me to go back. So did the master's program 2 years, and then from there looked into positions in San Diego, just because this was where my partner was living at the time. We both kind of dedicated ourselves to look for San Diego. And then I kind of repeated the process, what was geographically near me, what was affordable to me, and that ended up being the JDP program. So again, since I found a position at UC San Diego, I used that year to kind of meet the faculty, know the people, meet students like Mario, who was currently in that program, who was my coworker my first year. Well, still my coworker now. We both came to Mir. So I guess I've just been following Mario around, and that's how I did it. But now I took that year to just really focus on my career, but also network with the people that were involved with the JDP, because I knew that was going to be the one program that I applied to. And if I didn't get in, then I would have just reapplied next year. So that's a little bit about my journey and things that I was kind of taking into consideration. Really, when it came to like research and faculty involved with the programs, while I do agree it's important to look at it, that was the last thing on my list. I was looking for the title of the degree, and I was looking at expense and location were my top priorities at that time.
And I guess for me, so I went right from undergrad to grad school, which was a decision that I made because I didn't want to lose like momentum kind of. Which I feel like it ended up being the right choice, but I would say that like there were I was questioning whether or not it would be like the right type of move to make, just because I was kind of scared I was going to burn out. Luckily I didn't, but I know that's very real. And I guess when I was approaching my search, like that was something I was really considering, but also I was considering location as well. I'm from San Diego and I did undergrad in San Diego, and I was like, do I want to stay? Do I want to go? And I ended up staying just because of costs. Like it was cheaper for me to live with family here in San Diego as I get my master's than move somewhere else. Even if the program is a little bit cheaper somewhere else, I think financially it wouldn't have been as sound of a move for me. And then also like, for me, the assistantship was also a big part of my decision. I wanted to work at the school that I was also going to at the time. So I ended up picking USD specifically because I really liked the assistantship I was offered, and kind of like through interview day, I feel like that's kind of helped me decide that I wanted to go here. And I guess for researching programs and kind of getting to know more about the process, I was a NASP enough, and Mario was my mentor. I also see Brasilia's here too. Hi, Brasilia. We're NAF together. But that really helped getting to meet people who are professionals in student affairs and kind of getting connected that way really helped me decide like what types of programs there were, you know, ones that have more like a thesis, and then like ones that also are more like research focused or portfolios. Like, so I would recommend to everyone to like look into that and see what type of, if you're pursuing a master's, what type of I guess what's the outcome of the program for you. Yeah, and that's a little bit about me and my process.
Thank you for sharing. The next set of questions, I think folks have already spoken to a little bit. So if anybody wants to elaborate on either one of them or both, I'll drop it again in the chat. But what were some of the barriers or challenges you experienced in your grad school search? And what are some resources you used to overcome these barriers or challenges, or in general during your search? So whoever wants to start off that question.
Well, I do want to, it's not really about berries, but a lot of people talked about cost. I do want to mention that my master's program in Illinois was completely free. And that was because of a graduate assistantship. So they just had a program where, well, it was just kind of, if you're out of state and you have a graduate assistantship, you would get a fee waiver. And I knew that. In fact, I only looked at places that had some kind of tuition waiver. And so, yeah, I'd say because I worked in housing also as a graduate assistantship within housing, I had free room and board, and then I didn't have to pay at all for tuition. And so I know that a lot of institutions here on the West Coast don't offer that. So it might be worth it to think about, you know, going middle or East Coast.
Yeah, I want to quickly kind of just piggyback off that. I spoke about how one of my non-negotiables was not going out of state, but I had student affairs professionals left and right telling me, go to the East Coast, go in the middle of the country because of that offer. And because that's something that I couldn't personally like take advantage of, it is something that like I was looking into, like, okay, well, graduate assistantships, like what can I do to kind of reduce my costs, which led to me getting into or continuing my career kind of like in housing, because I had already had experience, and that obviously does play a huge role, because rent and small costs like food can add up over time, right? And so looking at positions like that can really help aid your experience. And then also like just in the application process, like applying to graduate school is not cheap. It's like you need to think about, okay, well, I have to send over this transcript, that's like $12. And then you have to think about GRE fees, like preparing books, exams, and stuff like that. So it's like asking for fee waivers wherever it is applicable. Like I know I was able to get some application fees waived. You just like had to speak to the right people, had to email the right people to get that that fee waiver. And sometimes they even during like grad school fairs or like whatever their advertisements, sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, just like send me an email and I'll get your fee waived. And it's like, bingo, I just saved like $150. So just use your connections, and don't be afraid to like reach out for financial assistance, because a lot of the times like some of these institutions have the ability to do it. You just have to ask for it.
As I mentioned earlier, so Miami University was one of those schools where you were completely funded. So, and I also worked in housing. So I just want to let you know that those programs are still great programs. It really depends on the fit. And I think for me, being a first generation college student, you really sometimes just don't know what to ask. And I think that was one of my biggest obstacles, is like, do I need to listen to all the advice that people give me? Probably not, but it's just so hard when you really don't know what to be doing. And I think for me, it was just overwhelming. And it was also very much like, I didn't want to disappoint certain people. So like when I got into, because I applied, so when I graduated from undergrad, I took a year off and I went to school in out of state. So again, my parents were very strict. I was raised in a very strict Mexican family, but my parents could not afford to take debt on. So I found schools that, especially out of state and in state, that gave me a full scholarship all 4 years. It just so happened that my school happened to be in New York for undergrad. And then when I graduated, I stayed a year there to figure out what is next. And then I kind of fell into working in the Midwest full-time as a student affairs professional with a no master's degree, which was very, very unique and different. And I was coached there, and I really appreciate that experience to go into higher ed. And those were the individuals that told me about the grad programs that are free and are fully funded, and both for master's and PhD programs. But again, the caveat is you're either in the East Coast or you're in the Midwest. Again, nothing wrong with it, just you're gonna just have some challenges every once in a while. And I think for me, when I realized that it wasn't going to be happening, I wasn't gonna graduate from Miami University, I really had to kind of soul search again. And that's where I looked at my mentors. So my first supervisor working at my first full-time position ended up moving to Colorado State. And it just so happened that I had a housing position again. And so she basically coached me again to realize, like, what is next for you? What do you want to do? And I think that's something for us, especially as first generation college students, like whether you're first or second getting a degree, especially as you increase your degrees, it's hard to kind of admit when you're scared of something. And it's hard to admit that even using the word failure, like I hate using that word, is like, did I fail? Did I fail to not get this master's degree the first time? And so for me, it took a lot of internal reflection, but also it took my parents to get sick, unfortunately, for me to realize that it was time for me to go back home. So, I left. I was 18 when I left home, and I didn't come back until I was like 25, essentially, or I don't even remember. I'm already old. And but I think for me, it took my parents' health to really wake me up and say, like, I need to figure out what I want to do next with my life, but also realizing that my parents were important to me. And so I'm an only child, so I had to come to the realization that I was going to be taking care of them, as much as I didn't want to take on that role, where the child starts taking care of your parents, because they did so much for me. I mean, they still do so much for me, but it's hard when they're getting older and they start leaning on you. And I think for me, that was really this resistance of like, but I don't want to be stuck here. And so instead, that's where I found is like, well, where's the happy medium? So for me was, I could be 2 hours away, still have an independence, still be a car ride away, which I can do in an hour and a half. I don't recommend that, but just know that I really wanted to find another opportunity for myself where I could still grow professionally. I knew I was going to go into some debt. I did not go into debt from undergrad. And so when I made the decision that I was going to go to USD, I knew that I was going to get into debt, and I had to really come to terms with that. Is like, are you okay with this, Ariela? And so when I did, and then when I realized that I could get a full-time job here, even though I was working at UCSD, y'all, Mario was actually my supervisor for a couple of months before I came back to USD. And that's where I realized that I could get tuition remission. So tuition remission in certain universities, they can either fully cover the whole, basically the fees and how much it costs for the school, for you to pay for the class. But there is also like partial tuition. So meaning that they'll only pay half of it or so forth, but you still have to get taxed for it. So it's essentially like this scholarship that they put kind of like a stipend in your paycheck, and then you get taxed for that. So I also needed to come to realization, okay, my paycheck's going to get cut in half. So what is that going to look like, and how many classes do I have to do? So I think for me, I did choose to continue taking out the student loans because I am a provider for my parents. My parents, as much as, they're still working, they're still hustling and doing what they need to do. But I also realized that me being in school offered me to have that opportunity to take a loan out if I needed to, rather than going through a private loan. And so I'm not saying that's for everybody, but that is something to consider, that number one, there's no shame to take out those loans, because I feel like, especially right now, loans is a hot topic. But at the same time, I feel like there really isn't a low shame. I really am seeing it as an investment to myself. I am working towards a position that I think I've been coaching myself, I will get, so I can pay off these loans, and strategically putting myself into positions, whether it's my research, professional development, to elevate to the level that I want to be, so I can make payments to pay off this debt. And also to apply for the loan forgiveness program and public service, because that's a thing. And it will happen somehow. I don't know when, but it will happen. And people that I knew have been applying for this. It's real and it works. We just have to, and if you don't know what that is, find people that can teach you how to navigate that portal as well. So that's what I just want to kind of name that. There's no shame in taking out student loans. And also there's no shame finding like if you need to have 2 jobs, whatever it is, 2 assistantships to pay that, I give you props for that. And I see it, it's real. But at the same time, make sure that you take care of yourself and that you're feeding yourself physically and mentally and emotionally. So.
Thanks, Ariela. And in a second, Harper and Moises will be able to chime in too. I just wanted to say after they share a little bit, I'll open up to the audience as well. So if you can start preparing some questions that you may have for our panelists, start maybe thinking about that now. So Harper, Moises, do either of you want to chime in?
Sure. Yeah, I think Ariela made great points about this idea of like just asking for help, not knowing what is out there. The biggest challenge and barrier I face with myself, I think, as a first gen oldest Latino male in a Mexican household, it was always this idea of like, you got to figure it out. You shouldn't be asking people because you're the oldest and you got to know these things. So during my master's, I actually was that person working 2 GA ships, Amazon deliveries at night, and then going to class. And it was rough. But again, I suffered in silence and I wasn't sharing like what was going on because I thought there was this like professional person you had to be when you're networking. You got to go suit and tied and ask these like really specific quick questions. And after a while, I mean, sad to say, I think I honestly just broke and I was like, I'm just going to do it my way and I'm just going to figure it out. And I started reaching out to people. And instead of asking for support, networking, or just like access to things, I just started sharing my story. Like, this is who I am. This is what I enjoy doing. I tried to find connection between people. And then at the very end of those conversations, I would ask, like, can you connect me to someone who you think might be able to help me in some way, shape, or form? And also, these are my goals. This is what I want to achieve one day. And if you know anybody, great. If not, we had an awesome conversation and it's much appreciated. And I would move on, right? So it's really figuring out, like, what is your own strategic way of doing things? And that became a really great opportunity for me to just grow and learn and be able to ask for help, because people give help as soon as you ask for it. They will give it. But there was a lot of like cultural challenges between me asking for that help. So I like to say I was like my own toughest barrier. But financially, I think I got really lucky because I didn't pay for undergrad. I was very fortunate because I was low income. Shout out to being low income and getting FAFSA and aid. And because I only did my master's 1 year after my undergrad, I only had 6 months of full-time earnings to report on FAFSA. So they still thought I was low income. So they were able to offer me grants and loans. And I only had to apply for one scholarship a year. Which I ended up getting through Cal State Fullerton, which paid for the master's. And then EDD, that's the one that hurt because there was no more of that. I did receive some scholarships and some fellowships that really helped. But at that point, it was all loan based. But again, I kind of looked at everything and I told myself, like, 3 degrees for just under 50 grand. I'm like, I'm not super gonna complain for that. Hoping that 20 grand gets forgiven, and then we'll push forward from there. So, so I think, there was a lot of different things, but really the hardest part about being first gen low income is like asking for help, because we're so used to navigating everything on our own and not being able to ask others that we kind of take that in, right? So once I was able to do that, I think that was a great opportunity for me to just learn, grow, get those fee waivers, get people to help me. So it's been like that for me.
And then I'll just add in like something really quickly on this question. I think that like it was difficult in one way going from like undergrad right into grad school in some ways, because when I was applying to grad school, it was like you know, I don't know, it was like the end of like one thing and then getting rushed into the next thing. So like, it was almost like I was like, or people are like, oh, enjoy your time, like enjoy your time now, like finishing up your degree. But like my head was already like trying to think ahead. And so I feel like in some ways that was overwhelming. And also no one that I knew was also applying to a grad school program at the time. So I felt kind of like alone. And also I didn't know how to ask for help exactly within that space sometimes. So yeah, I would say I wish if I like could go back, I wish I asked for more help and kind of was like real about like what I was going through in the experience for grad school. Cause I think that would have helped me a lot more with even like picking or applying to more schools kind of thing. So yeah.
Well, thank you all. Yeah, so those are all some of our prepared questions, and definitely want to echo surrounding yourself by good people, not just through the process, but even if once you get into the program, like really rely on the relationships that you have with folks to help you get through some of those challenges and barriers. So with that said, we will open up to the audience. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, you can either unmute or drop it in the chat. I can ask it for you. But yeah, now's the time for audience participation. So if anybody has any questions for any of our panelists.
I have a question. So for the folks that went out of state for their masters, what were your biggest challenges around navigating your identity in a very white state? Both of you being from Southern California, I'm also from Southern California and heavily considering going to the East Coast, particularly Vermont. So I'm wondering about your experiences with that.
Well, I think for me, even though Ohio was very lonely, I actually made some really good connections and I still keep in contact with people there. And I think that's one of the things what Mario said is that you kind of find people inside the program, outside of the program. And I'm even saying the executive assistants in the Midwest were so wonderful for me because there were these really, really Midwestern women who really just wanted to make sure, do you have a place to go after the holiday? Do you need a home cooked meal? Or even letting me know, like, are you missing spice? Like, especially because they knew, like, spice was very different in the Midwest. So like what they knew is like, there's this restaurant that has, which I think you might have, it may not be authentic, but at least it's something that, if you're homesick and so forth. So for me, it was more of like, I was looking for, parent figures, I guess, in some way that were kind of like, let me cry when I needed to, which I did. And at the same time, I just was really honest with my supervisors, even when I was working in housing, like how I was struggling. It wasn't so much that I felt out of place. I think it was just more the fact that my imposter syndrome was really high. And it was very high to the point where I was doubting myself that I could make it. And so I was essentially somewhat self-sabotaging myself a little bit. I think if I had taken a year off, maybe, or took a leave, I think maybe I could have finished the program. But I know for me, it was just, I just wasn't ready at that moment. And if anything, I think the bubble of the campus really just kind of hides a lot of the stuff that's happening around the world. So like, for instance, like, I didn't know how bad Ohio was as a state in terms of equity and access and segregation and racism until I left the campus. And so that was a reality check for me, especially this little girl from East LA who was like, I know what it is, but this is like in it. Like, this is really like the South stuff that I was not prepared for. And so I think for me, it was a reality of the fact that sometimes the university does keep you in a bubble, which is good and bad. But at the same time, just know that you'd be surprised. You're actually going to find a lot of people. And if you are looking at Vermont, I know a lovely, wonderful couple there that are multiracial, and they always welcome new students that are in the program. So let me know if you do end up going there, and I'm happy. And I think that's something to know, like, tell people, is like, do you know anybody that's there? You can connect me. And I'm sure there's plenty. If we don't know them, we will find someone that knows someone, so you can feel connected and so forth.
I'm just going to say, get ready to give up really good Mexican food. It was miserable. it became to the point where I really tried to find the most hole in the wall looking Mexican food restaurant and asked them if they can recreate carne asada for me, or carne asada chips for me, because that's like my favorite. And so it was bad. I had to throw it out because it was like inedible. They didn't know what I was talking about. And so I just resorted to just making Taco Shop my first stop when I came to visit San Diego. But in all seriousness, in Illinois, Champaign-Urbana is actually a pretty diverse campus for the Midwest, but I was probably still the only woman of color in my cohort. But I really got connected with a church community out there that was very focused on social justice and was extremely racially diverse. And I had some Filipino friends there too, who I got really close to. And I actually felt like it was home over there. I loved it. I loved my experience. And then the thing is too, it's only 2 years, or my program was only 2 years. It comes and goes in the blink of an eye. And really, it's an experience, even though it wasn't as diverse as Southern California, it was still an experience that is I won't forget. And it was made some really lifelong friends there.
Thank you both. Yeah, I'm already planning on taking my spices so that I can make my own Mexican food, because I already know I've already done the out of state, no food available. So thank you. And then one other follow-up just for everybody. Anybody that would be willing to speak to folks, if you could put your email in the chat, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And then probably have time for one more question. But fun fact, when I was in Colorado, I missed a California burrito. So I would stop by McDonald's and put fries into a carne asada burrito, because I was like, I just need a California burrito. People don't know what that means. So I did my own. So it's similar to like other folks. Any other questions? Well, all right. Well, I think we're actually close to time anyway. So we'll go ahead and wrap up there. Just a few quick plugs. So tomorrow there's 2 last webinars. The first is one about the retirement phase. So I know that you're all starting to talk about entering different like graduate programs, but you start thinking about retirement. My mind's on retirement already some days, but everyone already knows my plan post-retirement. For if you know me, you know I'm going to be working at Target after I retire. But basically, if you want to attend that one, it's tomorrow from 9 to 10 a.m. And then in the afternoon, or then at 11 o'clock, there's a Meet the Region 6 chair. So it's Dean Ramin, Dr. Ramin Talesh will be talking a little bit about his experience. And if you want to meet him, again, good people, surrounding yourself with good people and meet good people. So, and he's good people. So with that said, thank you all. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your experiences and spending some time with us this morning. We appreciate hearing your insights. And yes, feel free to reach out to all these folks later on. And with that said, Kevin, is there anything you want to add before we wrap it up today?
Just want to say thank you to all of our panelists, our presenters, and thank you for all of you for taking time to participate in the session today and your investment in the future of student affairs. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Mario, as the co-host as well.
All right. Appreciate you all. Have a good rest of the day.